Let me in now, and it can be nice. Make me go now, and I'll have to come back. Not once, not twice, but as many times as I like.
Is it scary being a lady FBI agent?
Yeah, it is. The first murder happens on July 14th, 1966. The rest occur within 6 days of the daughters' birthdays, either before or after.
What happens if
Well, it's time to do it. You've heard of Longlegs, right? You know, Longlegs. The movie Longlegs. I'm not talking about Stacy Keibler Longlegs. No, I'm talking about the horror movie that got a lot of people, and probably you, in a tizzy in 2024's awesome array of horror movies. Let's be real, 2024 has proven that horror is alive and well with legacy projects and a bunch of new and innovative stories. As a horror fan, I couldn't be more happy. Time to go to school, folks. The word hype is defined as extravagant or intensive publicity or promotion. To be fair, you gotta admit that the marketing for this weird sounding film was off the charts.
I drink it up!
We will get to that, and also a dozen other things that I know that you missed in Longlegs. If you didn't know, I'm a big fan of the genre and the history of it. The through lines from films and actors from back in the day to movies that are just now being released in the theater. Many filmmakers try to imprint their skills, creativity, and style in an arena with many eyes fixed on what is created. Enter director Osgood Robert Perkins II, tasked with continuing his journey behind the camera and continuing to prove himself while stepping out of the gigantic shadow of his family ties. The question is, would fans be ready to go a little mad with him, or would they succumb to madness like the victims of Longlegs? Let's get down to brass tacks. In this Why You Hate video, and by the way, I've done several episodes of films that sometimes divides the fans and causes a great discussion for people on both sides of the fence. Check them out in the Why You Hate playlist if you haven't already, or if you're in need of some fun and a good horror discussion, check them out again. It's not gonna hurt, I promise. Also, if you would personally like to help me decide on films for new episodes and much more while supporting the channel, join our channel membership program by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. It's a member perk for our movie fanatics level and above. You know you're a movie fanatic. We all are. So as I was saying, I'm going to go over some reasons why fans have issues with Longlegs, including multiple things that I know will be a strong debate in this community for the lovers of this film and the detractors of it.
we have such sights to show you?
I will also attempt, if at all possible, to show how some issues might not hold as much weight as they seem.
It is not in the file!
I'll also touch upon some history and behind the scenes info that give a snapshot of this film's journey. And also, I'm going to go over numerous things that people missed in this film. So get ready to celebrate your birthday on the 14th. Make sure you bring your Longlegs with you. Don't accept life-size dolls from a nun. And don't interrogate a psycho who wants to beat up a table with his own head. Here are the reasons why you hate Longlegs. Number 1, director and style. Writer-director Osgood Perkins is the son of Anthony Perkins, the actor who is best known for playing the iconic Norman Bates in Psycho from 1960, as well as its 3 sequels. There is no denying the importance of the character and those films in horror history. I know I've said it on this channel tons of times, but if you haven't seen Psycho and its sequels, especially Psycho 2, you really should watch them, and I mean it.
Yes, I do!
Being the son of a legend can be a fantastic thing or a distracting shadow that seems to never lift. In my opinion, Oz Perkins has navigated this in an admirable way and has shown tremendous talents of his own in his previous work. Gretel and Hansel from 2020 was a weirdly delightful dive into an enchanted tale, and one of my favorite horror films of the last decade was 2015's The Black Coat's Daughter. What a downright ride that takes you as the viewer on a horrific journey. Longlegs shares similar satanic themes with the debut film The Black Coat's Daughter. The star of that film, Kiernan Shipka, has a small cameo in this film. It was great seeing her. The only thing is, I wish that maybe we got a little bit more of her. I think she's a fantastic young actress. But when I heard that Perkins was doing this as his next film, I was truly excited, and even more excited when I learned who the two leads were. More on Michael Monroe and Nicolas Cage in a minute. Religious overtones can be a powerful weapon for a director, or it can totally undermine the project.
The power of Christ compels you!
Longlegs was able to use these overtones in a very deceptive yet strong way. The decoded birthday card in the film reads, "Stood upon the sands of the sea." This is a reference to Revelations 13:1 from the Bible, which reads, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." Collaboration was definitely a tool used to make this film have multiple layers, and you can see that in the finished product. These layers are definitely something that a viewer may miss upon the initial viewing. A good example of this is the upside down triangle pattern was not part of the original script, but a suggestion by producer Dan Kagan to better the story. The composer of this film is actually Osgood Perkins' brother, Elvis Perkins, and he did a fantastic job with the choices that he made, giving this film a presence that seemed otherworldly. The band T-Rex features prominently in the movie. As a matter of fact, in one scene, Longlegs is driving to the hardware store while listening to the T-Rex song, Planet Queen. Lyrics to that song include the line, "Give me your daughter," but we don't hear that part in the scene. Of course, this is a reference to things that are happening in the film and his motivations and plots. Oz is truly an amazing visual storyteller, and here are some initial things that you may have missed. A shadowy horned goat-like creature representing Satan is present throughout the film a total of 10 times, particularly when Agent Harker is investigating the satanic elements of the crimes. The creature's appearances were meant to be subliminal and not readily apparent to the audience. Now, I have to admit, it wasn't readily apparent to me, but when I think back on it, I do remember most of these that happened on screen.
Look at us. Hey, look at us.
Look at us, huh?
Number 1, when Harker is sitting on the floor reviewing the case files. Number 2, in the woods outside of her cabin home. Number 3, in the kitchen when Harker is reading the card left for her by Longlegs. Number 4, in Longlegs' basement by the staircase. Number 5, in the window between 2 bookcases when she is investigating the library. Number 6, in the small window of the kitchen's rear entrance door. 7, during Harker's childhood bedroom flashback in the doorway. 8, in the window of the basement's foyer at Harker's mother's house. 9, in Lee's bedroom when the mother is revealing the story of the doll maker. And number 10, in the reflection of the front door of the Carter home as it's being closed at the end of the film. Now, this movie is set in the year 1995, which was during the final years of the US quote-unquote satanic panic era. This was a moral panic involving widespread accusations of the satanic ritual abuse on the basis of recovered memory theory. People were panicked that, number 1, organized satanic cults were targeting children for abuse, and number 2, the abused children were made to forget or repress their memories of the satanic abuse, and number 3, the prompted aid of a therapist or investigating officer was able to recover the repressed memories of the victims. Lee Harker's experience follows the moral panic pattern in that she was forced to forget her memories of being targeted by a Satanist, Longlegs, as a child and later recovered those repressed memories with assistance. In a 2024 interview with Deadline, Oz Perkins spoke about the motivations behind Alicia Witt's character. He said, "Mama Bear will do the thing that she has to do to protect the baby bear. It's just innate. It's the spiritual biology or whatever you want to call it. It's instinctual. And she says toward the end of the movie, "I did it for you, and that makes it right." And for her, there's no argument around that. It's like, I had a choice. I could either hurt a bunch of people or let you be hurt. And for her, there's no choice there. Does that make her bad? Kind of. Does it make her also like an ideal mother? Absolutely. Here are my feelings on it. I believe that characters that commit evil acts motivated by love can provide a very interesting dilemma. How would you handle a situation like that? Could you? I mean, the weight of this decision alone is enough to break the average person. You're talking about a ton of bricks just coming down on your shoulders. Can you hold the weight? That's the question. Now, on a film level, it gives the actor the opportunity to really shine, and credit should be given to Alicia for a great performance, in my opinion. Number 2, marketing and hype. The first official trailer was titled, "You've Got the Teeth of the Hydra Upon You," and the other 2 teasers were named Dirty and also Sweet, all of which are references to T-Rex's 1971 Bang a Gong, Get It On. When I saw the trailers, I really felt like this film would deliver on the ability to provide a fresh feeling. The other thing is, they didn't give away too much. Thank goodness for that. I mean, can we just acknowledge how many trailers nowadays give away so much? No. Actually, too much.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
It's like the people who cut the trailers try to cram more spoilers in it than a magician giving his confessions of his secrets that he's been holding on to after 14 years of working in Vegas, where he felt the guilt of trying to convince people that sawing a lady in half can be a real thing, even though that there's no way that it can.
What the hell am I looking at?
The movie had a budget of less than $10 million, and you can definitely see that every bit of it was used in the right way. And guess what? $10 million is what it made on its opening day. Talk about a win. Oz was very savvy when dealing with the trailers and how much to hold back. His request of not using Nicolas Cage on the posters or in the trailer, despite him playing the titular character, led Neon to come up with a creative plan to promote and sell the movie without depending on Cage. 2 + 2 always equals 4, and to me, this was no doubt a great thing that happened. Creativity was born out of necessity.
Groovy.
The test audiences described this film as having imagery that was very similar to films such as The Silence of the Lambs, Zodiac, and Seven. All 3 films are absolute classics, and if you haven't seen them, you really should.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Longlegs had a popular social media marketing campaign as well, which went viral and even included billboards with nothing but the phone number 458-666-4355.
It is not in the file.
Which led to a recorded message of the titular character saying, "I'll be waiting," if the number was called before the release, or singing "Happy Birthday" if the number was called after. A series of short videos containing ciphers, a series of images on Instagram, a fake website for the in-movie murder cases with photos and case details. Those were found on the Birthday Murders website, and an ARG alternate reality game requiring fans to use the above to solve puzzles and codes to obtain passwords to open downloadable files. Number 3, Longlegs. Osgood Perkins thought of only 2 actors to play Longlegs, Nicolas Cage or Brad Pitt. Well, guess what, Mr. Smith?
Who?
You're a great actor.
And you blew it! You blew it!
But I think we definitely took home a prize with Cage. Nicolas Cage, that is, and his resume is as whacked out as his character is.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
We all know that he can act, and we all know that he can be batshit crazy.
Let me in now.
Yeah, he is a guy for this role. I found his performance to be very creative. Now, with some people who are not on board with Longlegs, they absolutely hated Cage's choices.
You son of a bitch!
His high voice and talking in codes and riddles can be a lot to take in. I will say that I can understand that criticism, But in my mind, with all of the killers and villains and so forth in film after film, they sometimes get lost between each other. This character stands out. When you hear him, when you see him, when you pay attention to what he says, there is much to unpack and absorb. Possibly a villain and a role that will stand the test of time. Many of Longlegs' encrypted messages contain misspellings and poor grammar after being decoded. This is definitely an homage to the Zodiac Killer, who was also known for his coded messages containing typos, which often made it more difficult to decode his messages. We don't get our first proper glimpse of Nicolas Cage until nearly an hour into the film. Cage's makeup and mannerisms for the film bear some resemblance to the likeness of Marilyn Manson, who was viewed as a Satanist during the 90s and for the most part of the 2000s, and he faced scandal over predatory behavior towards women. Now, when the test audiences saw the film, they absolutely praised Nicolas Cage's performance and mentioned that he was so off-putting that it could potentially scare viewers off.
We have such sights to show you.
Now, despite this praise and the acclaim of his portrayal as Longlegs, Nicolas Cage has stated that this will be his first and only portrayal of a serial killer for film. In an interview with IndieWire, Cage had said, "I know that the phone's going to be ringing off the hook to play serial killers after Longlegs, and that's not really what I'd like to do." Longlegs quotes the poem Satan Says by Sharon Olds in his messages. This poem is about a girl locked in a cedar box being told by Satan that he can get her out if she blasphemes against her family. She does so, but Satan then seals her in the box and leaves her there. While referred to almost exclusively as Longlegs though, the titular killer's real name is spoken once on screen, Dale Ferdinand Cobble. Though not explicitly stated, Longlegs refers to Dale in his human form, in which he literally has long legs, as opposed to the short legs of the dolls he imbues with satanic energy to carry out his murders. When Cobble threatens Ruth during a flashback, he mentioned coming back as many times as I like. In the present day, it's revealed he's living and operating out of Ruth's basement, coming and going as he pleases. But let's back up a bit. The opening flashback of Cobble claiming that he's delivering the birthday present to a young Lee is an early indication of how he's making fathers kill their families and themselves, an answer that eludes the FBI since they won't consider the supernatural elements. The FBI mentions that when they have Cobble, despite all his clear Satanism, there exists no physical evidence linking him to any murder. This is because Cobble has never gotten his own hands dirty. He creates dolls that channel Satan to possess and corrupt fathers into murdering their families behind closed doors without Cobble ever having to personally shed a drop of blood. Now you tell me, is this some crazy villain shit or what? I mean, yeah, a villain like Jigsaw doesn't actually kill his victims, subjects, but he has the handiwork of the traps right there in plain daylight. Longlegs was carrying out his plan and being successful for decades. Top tier status in my opinion, because no one could figure out how this was happening, who he was, and how he was able to do it. One of the interesting things about this film and this character is the name Longlegs. The serial killer's nickname goes unexplained in this film, but is actually an homage to an old nursery rhyme called Goosey Goosey Gander.
Who?
The nursery rhyme's connection to the film is readily apparent as Lee stopped saying her prayers in the film. Longlegs lives in Ruth's basement, which is where Lee ends up after Ruth destroys her doll, and the rhyme is about the persecution of the Catholics. After Longlegs kills himself in the interrogation room, Carter is unusually agitated and announces that the case is shut. This is likely due to the fact that his daughter's birthday happens to be on the day that the missing murder will happen on, and he is highly uncomfortable about that, or perhaps already under the beginnings of the final doll's influence. And indeed, the accomplice does show up at Ruby's party to gift her the doll, which makes Carter murder his wife and attempt to kill Ruby. Cobble, knowing Lee's name and several personal details about her, along with his machinations in guiding her along a certain path once she gets involved in the investigation, seems like an indication of a savant intellect, akin to the Riddler in the Batman, But him not doing this with any other officer in the case, or even any other character in the story, hints that he can do so because he has not only a personal history with Lee, but a direct connection to her and a source of information about her in the form of her mother, Ruth. Here is a piece of the dialogue between Cobble and Lee. It really paints a picture, and the clues are all there right in front for the viewer to see. He says, "Oh, there she is, the almost birthday girl. Oh, it's funny, the day you decided to go in law enforcement, you were 20. We had such a big laugh about it, though it was only me who laughed, not she." Lee says, "Who's the she that you're talking about?" Longlegs says, "The seventh she to be given the same choice they've all been given, crimson or clover. Accept the gift and destroy. Destroy yourself and yourselves, or keep it and bow down. Bow all the way down and get right down to the dirty, dirty work. Work that gets dirty as it cleans, like a mop, like a rag." Like a detective putting everything together, you can see how Longlegs is giving Lee the puzzle with most of the pieces put in place. This also begs the question of what his true motive is at the end of the day. Number 4. Lee. Michael Monroe initially met with Osgood Perkins about playing the lead role, only to later hear that the director didn't think she was right for the part. Alarmed at the thought of losing out on what she considered a great role, she made an audition tape which helped seal the deal. Now, I have said on this channel for years that Michael Monroe is fantastic ever since I first saw her in It Follows. She was great in Watcher and also Significant Other as well, just to name a few. I'm a fan of her ability to play different types of roles while yet maintaining a charisma that can connect with a viewer if they're open to it. Her depiction of Lee fascinated me. She straddles the line where you realize that she's displaying some signs of possible autism. Lee possesses a flat and measured effects while communicating. Micah's speech patterns are often stilted, and her facial tics carry throughout the entire runtime of the movie. It's a very interesting choice to make, and I applaud her and Perkins for it. This film rests on her shoulders, and I, for one, was happy to follow this journey. I can imagine for some, and that might be you, it's hard to follow her and be emotionally invested.
We're fine!
She doesn't show emotions much, if at all. One of the few times she smiles and laughs is when she visits her mother, and even then the emotion seemed odd coming from her. Lee Harker is a character that I would love to see more of, but I'm not sure if that will ever happen though. That being said, there were many scenes where Harker commanded attention in a very nuanced way. During the psychic test, Lee says the words camera, table, door, mother, father, piano. During the flashback scene, we see Lee's mother watching the camera family murders happen through an open door next to a piano with a priest. Alicia Witt, who plays Michael Monroe's mother in the film, is 17 years and 9 months older than her. Osgood Perkins wanted to cast Alicia after seeing her performance in Twin Peaks in 2017. Her performance is subtle at first with a bit of eccentric rhythm, a very well played part that, despite seeming off, actually melds perfectly with Micah's Lee. This mother and daughter literally coined the phrase awkward to a T. When you hear that first phone conversation, the uneasy feelings started to grow, and before you know it, Lee has to defend herself, or so she thinks. You see, this film, just like the characters, are just scratching and clawing around in the dark of ignorance. Ignorance of the fact of what is happening, and the ignorance to never even conceive the possibilities. Michael Monroe was kept completely in the dark over co-star Nicolas Cage's transformation as the serial killer, and had never seen Cage in character until they shot their infamous interrogation scene, which also happened to be Cage's final day on set. During filming, Monroe wore a microphone on her shirt, which, along with her dialogue, was sensitive enough that it had managed to capture her heartbeat as well. Monroe's initial resting heart rate was 76 BPM. When the scene ended, it had spiked to a rate of 170.
The suspense is terrible. He's gonna go this time. I hope it'll last.
The sound of her panicked heartbeat was then used in a final promotion trailer prior to the movie's July 12th release. In an interview with IndieWire, Monroe recalled, "It was insane. It was absolutely insane. As you know, he completely transformed. There was no trace of Nick in there. His voice, his mannerisms, he was very much method on this. The note Longlegs leaves Lee states that deciphering it will lead to her mother's murder, which it does since it's revealed that Ruth is the accomplice and Lee will have to shoot her to protect herself and Ruby. The scene with the note really grabbed me as I watched it in the theater. Imagine seeing this on a big screen and trying to figure out these clues while Lee is also doing the same. Number 5. Crazy clues. Here are a bunch of interesting things, clues and such that you may have missed in Longlegs. You can see the original Annabelle doll in flashbacks between young Lee and her mother. During an early scene in which Agent Harker is being tested for psychic abilities, all of her answers foreshadow aspects of the film. The answers include camera, keeping Polaroids she took as a child, as well as the name of the family of victims. Piano, present in young Lee's room and at the scene of the camera murders. Mother, alluding to her mother's involvement in the crimes. Father, Harker's father is never mentioned throughout the film, but this answer corresponds to the inverted triangle representing 666, which is also the algorithm for targeting victims. And Tiger, not a direct connection, but Cobble's bed has many blankets with animal print patterns. One of the flashbacks that Lee has shows her imagining her mother spotting an intruder and going for a shotgun, carrying and loading it in a very specific way. When the accomplice is revealed, it is obvious it's Ruth before her face is even in the frame, as she carries and loads the same gun in the exact same way 2 decades later. Another interesting thing about the test, when the upside down triangle flashes on the screen during Lee's FBI association test, she labels it with father. This triangle is a symbol she connects with Longlegs and Satan later on. It also suggests that Lee is being unwittingly under the influence of Satan the entire time. When Lee calls her mom early on and hesitates to give her details about Longlegs' investigation, Ruth reminds Lee that she used to be a nurse and had seen her share of gruesome deaths. Of course, since it turns out that she was the accomplice, she's caused many gruesome deaths too. When Lee meets Ruby for the first time, she is wearing a shirt with a white house on the front. This alludes to a scene later in the film when Longlegs is talking about the camera farmhouse being bright white, but Lee's house being the whitest he's ever seen. This also foreshadows Ruby being Longlegs' final victim. The rearview mirror in Longlegs' car has a bottle opener in the shape of the zodiac sign Capricorn hanging on a string. This is a zodiac sign for those born December the 22nd to January 19th, including Harker, who was born on the 14th of January. When Lee enters her mother's house near the end of the film, all 3 hands on the clock over the archway have been set to 6, another instance of the 666 theme that has reoccurred throughout the film. Lee's mother is shown to own a Volkswagen Beetle, creating a mild level of foreshadowing due to its association with more serial killers in the USA than any other single vehicle's make or model.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
It's definitely unclear if this was intentional on the filmmaker's part or if it was coincidental choice. At the end of the day, Longlegs weirded out fans like Cobble singing Happy Birthday to Lee for 20 minutes or more on end, and we as fans must deal with it in our own way.
You son of a bitch!
You have to ask yourself, is Longlegs a great film? Is it overrated or worthless? That is a question only you can answer. As always, this video is not here to make you love Longlegs or to hate it. It's simply a discussion to highlight the history and aspects of the film, good or bad, with you, the viewer. So what do you think? Are you a fan of Longlegs? If so, tell us why. If not, let's discuss why you hate Longlegs. If you haven't hit the like button, please do. And if you're not subscribed to the Night Watch Zone, this is the time to do it. Do it and become part of this fantastic community where you'll never love and talk about movies the same. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.